Welcome to the Open Hour. Benvenuti. Thank you for joining the webinar. It's very nice to see you. Numerous participants coming in. We'll wait just a couple of minutes as everyone enters the room. Thank you again for joining. We have still some people connecting, so we wait another minute or so. Benvenuti, aspettiamo ancora un attimo se c'è qualcuno che sta ancora collegandosi. Okay, so people are still slowly joining, but I'm going to start also slowly. Welcome to this Open Hour webinar. This is organized by the IPCC Focal Point for Italy. I'm Anna Pirani, I'm the Focal Point alternate for Italy. And this is one of various events that we organize now that the 7th assessment cycle has started to familiarize you all with the various milestones that we're reaching. We've started seeing the scoping processes of different reports for the 7th cycle. And now we've reached a very important milestone, the first call for authors. So the webinar and these activities in general are done in English. They are targeted particularly towards experts and practitioners in Italy. So as Focal Point for Italy, we are trying to support the interface of experts based in Italy with the IPCC process. But the IPCC assessment, as you know, is all undertaken in English. And so a proficient level of English is required. And also these events that we are organizing, other people around the world are very welcome to join. So we have participants coming from all over the world, and you're all very welcome, and we hope to answer your questions as well. So just change slides. So just to introduce to you the Focal Point of Italy. So the role of the Focal Point is really to connect the community, the expertise that's based in Italy, and the political communities, policymaking communities in Italy to the IPCC. We represent Italy at the plenary sessions, and we also carry out a lot of dissemination and communication activities about the IPCC. So Antonio Navarra is the Focal Point, and I am the Focal Point alternate since about a year. And CMCC, the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change Foundation, where we are based, is subcontracted by the Ministry of the Environment and Energy Security for Italy. And we are essentially carrying out the ministerial role as Focal Point in this intergovernmental process in support of the ministry. So we are very fortunate that CMCC provides substantive communication support. So Mauro Bonocore, Marina Menga, Agnese Glauda, and the wider communication team. And also Marta Elena, who's a scientist within CMCC, has started supporting the process just recently. So I'm really happy to introduce to you three special guests of this open hour. Annalisa Cherchi, who's from the Italian Research Council. She was a lead author in the AR6 Working Group 1 reports. Elena Verdolini is based at the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change. She was also a lead author in the AR6. This one was the Working Group 3 reports. And then we have Giacomo Grassi, who's from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and he's also based in Italy. He's also a Bureau member of the Task Force on Inventories, and he has been a lead author both of the Special Report on Land and Climate Change and of the AR6 refinement to the 2006 IPCC guidelines of national greenhouse gas inventories. So the idea here is for me to give you a summary of what we're talking about here, what this call for authors is, to try to raise awareness of what the call is about, what are the expectations of authors, some elements of the assessment process, and the idea is really to help you be informed as to whether you would like to contribute and in what way. And we really hope this activity motivates participation and broader participation, but that we raise awareness of the IPCC. And then with our special guests, we're going to hear about their insights and experiences. I think it's very important that you hear directly from them what it's been like. And you're very welcome to ask questions after that. So we'll have a session to discuss any particular issues you might want to explained more, or you'd like to hear more from our past authors. And throughout the webinar, you're very welcome to use the Q&A function, and we will respond in writing, but we also pick up some of the questions and come back to them at the question and answer session. So this webinar is recorded, and we will also provide in writing answers to some of these frequently asked questions that come up, and we think will be useful just to provide that in writing. So you all know that the 7th assessment cycle has started at the beginning of this year. And just a reminder of the package, we have the special report on climate change and cities and the methodology report on short-lived climate forces, for which we discuss here the call for authors. And then there will be a report on carbon dioxide removal technologies, carbon capture, storage and utilization, and the full working group reports. This has been agreed earlier this year. There will be a product revising and updating technical guidelines on impacts and adaptation as well. And at the end of this process, by late 2029 or by 2029, there will be the synthesis reports of the 7th assessment cycle. So the timeline has begun at the beginning of the year. We always bear in mind the underlying international policy timeline. So we've had the first global stocktake, and we know that we have ahead of us the second global stocktake in 2028. So here we are, the cities special report and the methodology report for short-lived climate forces had scoping meetings earlier this year, and experts and practitioners around the world were selected. They came together, they produced their proposal for the outline of the reports. These were agreed by governments just now in July, early August by the panel. And now here we are, thanks to that process, we can open the call for authors, and the drafting begins soon, and to be completed in 2027. And just to recall again of the broader AR7 package, there will be the scoping meetings for the other reports that are anticipated for this cycle. They will be agreed at a plenary session in February next year, after which we will call for authors for these processes. So what are we looking at here? We have agreed outlines. They are available on the IPCC website. I hope you've looked at them carefully if you're interested in nominating yourselves. What you find in these outlines are the title of the reports, the chapters, and the indicative content. So the bullet points or the indicative content has been agreed based on the experts' guidance and with governments. And when you nominate yourself for an author, you're nominating to address the contents of the chapters. So obviously the timeline is provided, and also you'll notice that there is funding allocated, and this is specifically for developing country author travel. The nominations are for 3 roles: coordinating lead authors, and review editors. The nominations have to be submitted to the IPCC by national focal point. So if you're based in Italy, you will need to go through the Italian focal point. You can also go through observer organizations, and here in the presentation, you will find hyperlinks. These are the list of organizations are all available on the IPCC website. The selection of the authors is made by the IPCC Bureau, not by the focal points of national focal points or observer organizations. So in Italy, how you should apply, generally these instructions apply for everybody, but specifically for experts based in Italy, you do need to go through the focal point, as I said, and the focal point will transmit the nominations that meet the expertise criteria and minimum application standards to the IPCC. There are 2 components to the nomination: a nomination form, it's an Excel file, and there are 2 tabs. All the required fields need to be completed, and you need to provide an updated CV There's specific, needs to be no more than 2 megabytes in size, PDF format, and so on. If these formats are not respected, they actually cannot be uploaded onto the IPCC website. So please be very careful and accurate. You email these nomination form and CV to the Italian Focal Point, and we have set some internal deadlines to manage these processes. So for Italy, you must submit by Friday, 6th of September, this Friday, for the methodology reports, and the following Friday for the city's special report. Please check with your own national focal point or with observer organizations if you go through other avenues to submit your nomination. So quite strict. Nominations that don't follow these instructions will not be considered. We do not have the time to do the administrative work and so on. And just a very important flag that for experts based in Italy, we do not have an additional budget, a central budget, to support your participation in meetings. So this is a commitment that your institute needs to be willing to make. The travel will be covered by your affiliated institution. So roles and expectations. There are these 3 roles. I'm not going to read all of this out. What I intend to do with these slides is go quite quickly and indicate to you information that you will need to follow up on to know more about what's expected for this call of authors. So here I refer to the principles governing IPCC work, all on the IPCC website. And the 3 roles are coordinating lead authors. They really are responsible for the management and preparation of a chapter. They are authors themselves, and they work also in the consensus building process, management of the production of the chapter on all aspects, including figures, the data, and eventual synthesis into the executive summaries, technical summary, and summary for policymakers. Lead authors cover more specific areas within the chapters. They will address a subsection or multiple subsections, and they bring their expertise to these topics. Sometimes the experience is that topics are addressed in multiple chapters, or there may be coordination to be done with other reports, and you may be involved in these coordination activities. And the review editor role is quite different. It's not an author as such. Often these are experienced experts who also know the IPCC process quite well, and they really come into play to ensure the robustness and rigor of the formal review process of the IPCC reports. So they work alongside authors to advise how to best handle particularly the more contentious or controversial issues where there are diverging views in the review comments. So these are the 3 roles. Authorship is, there is an ethics of authorship, which I'm sure you're all very much familiar with through your own work as scientists and experts. So to be an author of a report, you do need to ultimately provide a substantial contribution. The name does not automatically appear on the chapter. So you'll have a responsibility to ensure the quality of the assessment, to produce also text, sections, boxes, figures, and so on. You are expected to collaborate actively with other authors. It's a collective process, and the IPCC conclusions are built around a consensus. So it's an iterative collective discussion to assign, excuse me for the typo, the confidence in the assessment conclusions. You also have to be responsible for the whole chapter as well. So your name will be to the chapter, so you need to review and agree and work with the full chapter team. Review comments. There are 2 formal review iterations, and you will be required to address the review comments that are specific to the content you're an expert on. And you'll be expected to participate in lead author meetings. So there are in-person meetings. CLAs and lead authors attend 4, and review editors attend 2. And then there are multiple chapter meetings online as needed and as called for by CLAs, bureau members, and so on. And authors of the SPM also attend the final approval plenary session. So it's a unique science policy interface. I'm sure you are familiar with it. It's very important to know that the reports are neutral, and there is no actual research that's undertaken as part of the process. So you're in this role assessing the available knowledge from publications and so on. And there are these iterative cycles in drafting the reports. These are formal processes where drafts are prepared, sent to review. Review comments are all responded to by the chapter teams. And at the end of the process, after the IPCC approval of the summary for policymakers, actually all the review comments and the responses become public. So it's a very transparent and rigorous process. just to ensure that everyone has a common understanding that this is an assessment and not a traditional review. So in a review, you would look at the available knowledge and maybe explain and summarize it. However, for the assessment, you take that a step further and you make a statement on how much we understand a topic, and you use a special calibrated uncertainty language that's been developed in the IPCC. And this means that across the reports, as much as is humanly possible, there is a consistent means of communicating the findings. The policy relevance is critical for the assessment. It's not an encyclopedia. So the topics are guided by policy relevance. And again, it needs to remain neutral to be able to speak to an international policy-making audience. So when you look at, for example, climate modeling in the literature, if you do a review, you'll talk about all the different methods and you'll maybe explain the types of studies and available models. In an assessment, you would look at this and look at the findings of the models also with other lines of evidence, and you will say how you as an expert judge the robustness of the findings more broadly. So you make an assessment of the evidence, not of the validity of the process or phenomenon itself. The phenomenon itself has been identified as important, and you won't argue necessarily for it to be discounted. You need to base your statement on the available evidence. So you'll be familiar perhaps with this calibrated language that the IPCC uses, confidence and likelihood levels, and there are some publications you can go and read about this. This takes a lot of time and effort to understand how to apply. It's not just a mathematical formula necessarily, and there needs to be a process by which all authors are on the same page and understanding. And then what you find in the end is that you can conclude the assessment outcomes very succinctly using confidence statements, likelihoods, and also a mixture of terms. And this is an example from the Working Group 1 assessment in the AR6. And we were able to formulate the findings in such a way that the headline up at the top, based on all the findings underneath, we could agree among authors that this was a statement of fact. So very, very powerful, clear communication of an enormous body of literature that underpins these conclusions. So this is achieved through consensus, and consensus is a tricky process. It really requires sort of hard work on the inclusive and participatory discussion and decision-making process. So you need to take into account all views appropriately. And for sure, the CLAs have a leading role here, but because it's such an important part of the process, we've found that it's very worthwhile to try and share this mediation amongst other authors as well. And we've developed sort of in the past techniques to try and facilitate inclusive decision-making processes, particularly where people are coming from very different backgrounds, different expertise, different parts of the world, and have different ways of discussing and contributing to discussions. There are misconceptions about consensus, and there are critiques about a consensus-based process. There is a lot of work out there in the social sciences, for example, discussing these approaches, but for sure, there are very strong reasons why we continue to work in this manner. And then the reports need to be traceable. They need to be very focused. They need to guide policymakers on the many, many thousands of publications that are out there. What have we learned since the last assessments? Why does it matter? What is our current understanding, and how confident are we? And in the end, the reports are built on publications starting at the left, maybe 14,000 publications, and then a report, which is, we all know, extremely large. It's very difficult to make these quite concise, actually. And then there's a synthesis towards a technical summary and a summary for policymakers, and even the figures, they go through a synthesis process. And that is an interesting activity to be involved in itself. It's not simplification, it's deconstruction and communication effectively of complex information. And there are some characteristics of the assessment that can really be helpful in enabling the science policy dialogue. And I've got some examples here just to show you the wideness of how you need to address the work to be effective at this science policy interface. But also, I wanted to flag for you just to digest maybe what will be challenged if material that is not in the outlines that have been agreed by governments is coming into the reports. Then governments will contest that. If there are missing topics that they had identified but were not somehow picked up by the authors appropriately, that will be contested. as well as the evidence base needs to be as strong as possible. Single studies, even if they're meta-analyses, can often be problematic for governments to be comfortable with. And then there are political issues. So, for example, regional differentiation, and also the way regions are represented in the assessment, or countries in graphs and things like that. At the end of this all, you come out with an incredible product. And this is what the AR6 climate report consisted of. You see the number of authors coming from all around the world, the volume of knowledge that fed this preparation of these reports, and the incredible participation in the review process. And you see the charge that is taken on by the authors. And the end, you come out with the state of knowledge on climate change, and it's the authoritative basis for climate policies around the world. There are many ways to participate in the IPCC. These are 3 formal roles: CLAs, LAs, REs, but you are able to contribute across the board in the IPCC process. Obviously, the literature and having your publications cited in the report, I think, is very satisfying. Your methodology has been picked up by the assessment reports. It's extremely rewarding to have these brought up into such a international fora. You can act as expert reviewers. The process is extremely open. You need to just have some expertise, and your views and input are always valuable. And you can also be contributing authors. And these are authors that are not on the author list as such, but they appear in the publication. They are solicited by the authors themselves, CLAs and LAs, when particular technical information is needed on top of what they're able to bring as an author team. And as we go forward in the assessment process, we as Focal Point for Italy will be looking forward to have webinars on various aspects of the process so that you know more, for example, how to be an expert reviewer. And we can also discuss the assessment in more detail, some of the things I touched on in the slides. So obviously, it's a heavy commitment, and we want very motivated people who have thought carefully about how they will contribute in these roles. That's extremely valuable, and it's been running for over 30 years, building on also other assessment processes. There's a long history, and for sure they come out with authoritative reports, very, very effective bases for communication, and talking to a broad audience. It's very respected. The work of the authors is extremely respected. And it certainly is stimulating for authors or experts because it stimulates further understanding, research, and collaboration. And clearly, it's a unique experience. It's inspiring to work with experts from around the world and with the policymaking interface with policymakers from around the world. So that's essentially all I was going to say. I hope that was a nice overview. I'm sorry for being a little bit fast to try and allow time for questions at the end. And you're welcome to drop in comments like you would like to know more about some topics. And some of these things, we'll pick them up in other webinars. So I stop there. I stop sharing as well. And now, before we do get to questions and answers, I'd like to bring back on the podium, as it were, our special guests. So Annalisa, Elena, and Giacomo, thank you again for being here. And I just give you the floor sort of in order, maybe Annalisa and then Elena and Giacomo, just to share what it's been like to be an author, how you feel people should think about contributing, and just anything you feel you'd like to share. And then we come back if people have questions. So over to you, Annalisa.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. And good morning, everyone. I'm Annalisa Cherchi, and I work at CNR here in Bologna. And I contributed to the 6th assessment report, and I was one of the lead author of Chapter 8 that was on the water cycle changes. It was a very great experience. So there were novelties in this. To me, the IPCC world was something completely new. But also this chapter was particularly new because in the previous assessment, there were no specific chapter for the water cycle changes. So it has not been easy to identify how to deal with this topic that was very well interconnected with all the other things that were written in the report, but there was to identify boundaries and ways on how to distribute the content. So that was quite challenging. And during the process, I end up to be involved also in other part of the report. So at some point, I was involved in technical summary for some specific topics. I end up to contribute to annexes, and I coordinated one annex on the monsoon. And at the end, I was also involved in the summary for policymakers. That was probably the most challenging part of the contribution, because at that stage, it's not only your scientific expertise and your ability to write an assessment that is different, as Anna was saying, that writing a review. So writing an assessment is something that you learn doing it somehow. But then participating to the Summer for Policymaker was challenging, because you end up to try to simplify the concept that you had written in a very heavy form in the rep, but at some point you have to simplify it. And the danger to simplify and make it wrong is very, very, very easy. So that was really, really challenging. But apart from that, the experience is a great experience. And from the scientific point, you realize that there is a lot of things that you can do, and there is a lot of things that you can learn. So you can learn to collaborate with others that you're doing as well, because you write papers with other scientists like you, but there you have to face the diversity in the topics, the diversity in which you face a problem, the cultural diversity, because people are different, and there you are in a room for 5 days, every day, and talking about the same things. So it's somehow challenging also from the human, but it's something that enrich you. So enrich you from the scientific point, but also from the human aspect, because you learn how to deal with the diversities and to respect what people think, and to find consensus that is not obvious. It's not only that there are 17 hands and 11 are positive and 9 are not, and then it's a decision. No, it's not like this. It's something that have to be built, discussing, and sometimes is challenging, but it's for sure something that gives you back a lot. But it's a work, so it's something that you have to commit to, and you need to work a lot. You can decide to work less or more, but if you want to do it properly, and then if you want that the product is something that is that will going to be useful and used, you have to think that a lot of your time during that process will be dedicated to that. Okay, so for now, I think I stop here and leave the floor to others. Thank you.
Thanks, Annalisa. Over to you, Elena.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, all of you, for being here. As Anna said, I think it's really important that people try to get as good a picture as possible of what they're getting themselves into, because no matter how we try to explain it to you, it's always going to be a novel thing, a new thing, and a challenging thing. Particularly, I would like to point out one thing. In the last assessment cycle, we were fortunate enough for Working Group 3 to meet in person twice, but then everything else was done online. So that made it particularly hard, because fortunately we had the time to meet our authors twice and connect a little bit, other co-authors, but that was also particularly challenging, I think, both for the authors and the TSU. Of course, my very strong hope is that that's not going to happen over the next cycle, that we will have a normal cycle, which will be, I think, even more rewarding than what the previous one has been. Let me pick up on something that Annalisa said, which I think is important. I second everything that she says, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'm just going to add up new information. Annalisa pointed out the fact that you are in a room for 5 days or 7 days or whatever, how many long days with people. That's part of the job, but the majority of your job you will do in your office. Okay, it's not just something that you volunteer to be there 4 times a year. There is a lot of work that you need to do in preparation for that. There are very strict deadlines that need to be respected, not only because people take a commitment, but also because you're part of a group, of a team. And if you don't deliver, other people are left behind in a certain sense as well. And then they have to pick up your slack. So I think the one thing that I think needs to be very, very clear and important is you need to be a person that likes to play in teams, with the good part and the bad part of playing in teams, in order to take out some satisfaction out of this process. You can still volunteer if you don't like that, but I don't think you're going to enjoy it very much in a certain sense to begin with. That's number one. The second, so the time commitment, this project ends up sucking up a lot of your time outside. I mean, your free time, your weekends. And I'm not saying this to scare people. I'm just saying this to point out that this is why it's important that you are an expert in what you do, because very likely, you know, if you do what you like, this is going to be something that you would be doing to a certain extent anyways. You know, like I like my work. I often spend Saturday mornings reviewing papers or reading or whatever. So the more disalignment, the higher disalignment, the better the experience for you. It's certainly a lot of work. So I gave you the bad news first, but then on the positive side, for me, it was an extremely rewarding experience. I learned a lot. I think I knew quite a fair amount going in as I was selected, and I think this hopefully is a sign of expertise. But the amount of things I learned in my own area. I was on chapter 16, technological change, similar position to Annalisa. The chapter was not there before. The last time that there was something very specific about technological change was in the 2005, if I don't remember wrong, assessment. So they wanted a place where we would talk explicitly about this. It was also a relatively, let me put it this way, a relatively easy chapter because it's about the processes, the policies, you know, whatever. So, and I learned a lot in that area, but I learned a lot about the interdisciplinary repercussions of both my expertise on other aspects, but also other aspects on my expertise. Perhaps the most peculiar thing that happened to us during writing of chapter 16 is the fact that at one point we decided to join up with the authors from other chapters to write a cross-chapter box on the topic of digitalization. I think this is an important thing to point out because there is an outline of the report. Sometimes some topics are so complicated, so cross-cutting that you need to address it in another way. So you may end up, like Annalisa, coordinating an annex or coordinating a special box, a cross-chapter box, or whatever other thing. So it's a very fluid process that, however, it's extremely focused, as Anna was saying, on delivering what is on the outline. If you don't deliver, you're going to have to write it again. And so it's really, really important. The process of replying to comments from non-experts was really, really intense. We had a ton of comments. You have to reply to them one by one, but you also learn what it means to talk about science and your expertise to people that are not necessarily academics. And I think this is important because we need to do a little bit more of cross-fertilization if we want our knowledge, collective knowledge, to influence policymaking. The interface with policymakers, I think it's there. If you are involved in the report, you may smell it, you may see down the line. It's not like you go talk to country representatives or anything, but at the end of the cycle, you will see that, you know, the sentence you have written gets lifted up to the summary for policymaker, and it's actually quite exciting to know that people are debating whether that should be an official statement of the UN. Yeah, I don't know if I could say anything more. I think I'll leave it at that for now. I hope I didn't take too much time, but yeah, if there are any questions, please.
Thank you, Elena. That was very complimentary, and also some new dimensions that you brought out in your insights. And now over to Giacomo.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thanks for inviting me and for this very interesting initiative. Thanks, Anna, for the excellent introduction, and to Annalisa and Elena also for the very insightful information. So again, I will not try to repeat what they said. First of all, I work at the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, which is based in Ispra, which is a small village next to Varese, which is different from the ISPRA, the Istituto Superiore per la Ricerca Ambientale, which is based in Rome. So I work for the European Commission. I work on terrestrial carbon cycle at the European and global level, mainly in interaction between climate and forest, especially on forest mitigation. As Anna said, I contributed to several IPCC report on Methodological Report and also the Special Report on land. I'm also part of the Bureau of the IPCC on Task Force on Greenhouse Inventory. If there is interest, I may explain better later what this task force does specifically. Coming back to the topic we are discussing, so the challenge and the beauty of being authors in this report. Yes, I mean, I confirm what Annalisa and Elena said before. Being a lead author is challenging, stimulating, requires analyzing research in our sector in a more systematic and broad view that we would do otherwise. It requires reading more papers, different papers that we would do otherwise. It requires interacting with researchers from all over the world, with different scientific backgrounds, but sometimes also with different vision of the world. Willingness to work in a multicultural environment is really an asset for in this context. This implies going beyond our own world. Sometimes in the academia, we work in bubble. I mean, it is very normal, very physiological. And these sometimes require going beyond our bubble, but it is very, very challenging, but also very enriching and exciting. As they also said before, at the end, you may have the impression that you make a difference going beyond our bubble, interacting with other people, and writing something that at the end will end up in the desk of important policymaker. It's extremely rewarding. From all these emerges what is, in my opinion, the main benefit of this experience, which are among the main benefits, which is networking. You have the opportunity of doing networking that you otherwise will not have the possibility to have. I mean, each of us is involved in project, mainly a national or European scale, but here you go even beyond that, and this is extremely rewarding. And it's also it can really create new opportunities for future collaboration at the international level. As they also said, it is different from writing a paper. It is extremely important workload. Be aware of the deadlines and how the deadlines for the IPCC may clash with your deadlines for project or institutional deadlines. It involves several missions abroad, several travels. Make sure that your hierarchy agrees and support the logistics and also the workload. And it's a main challenge also developing a new language. For those that have no experience working the science policy interface, this is an extremely rewarding experience, because you have to train in a language which is not the language of a paper, but is a language, especially in the Summit for Policymaker, which ultimately have to be understood by a general public, policymaker, but not only. So I would stop here. Happy to address any specific question on the Bureau or on the work I do.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I'm really happy with how you covered quite different aspects of the experience. And I think this has been really insightful and enriching for everybody here. It's not so, I guess, not an everyday thing to hear really what it's like within the IPCC process. And it's clear, like in the AR6, in the 6th assessment cycle, I was the head of the TSU, the Technical Support Unit for Working Group 1. So I did have a very nice, shall we say, viewing platform of this process and how authors work. And sometimes you see how understanding the assessment, understanding the science policy interface, managing to communicate internally and also outside of science, it takes the whole process. Like at the end of the story, after some suffering, because people can also find it very challenging, at the end of the story, you do come away with it's clear, the effect of this process, the understanding of how you undertake an assessment and understanding these language barriers that sometimes are very difficult actually to overcome. So thank you for your insights. I'm just going to pick up on a question that was, I actually meant to write it back, but I clicked, I'll answer live. Bianca asked, what is the time span of the report? So, we're talking 2 reports, special report on cities and the methodology report on short-lived climate forces. So if you look at the scoped outlines, the documents that are available on the Focal Point website with the respective calls, you will find a hyperlink of the outline, or you go to the IPCC website. It's very easy to find. You'll find there the timeline. So all the major milestones, looking at the city special report, the selection of authors will take place until around mid-December. It takes a long time to find the hopefully optimal formation of these author teams. And the first meeting is held in March next year, then July, and then the third meeting is in January the following year, and the fourth meeting is in the August of 2026. The anticipation is that it will be approved. The summary for policymakers will be approved in March 2027, so early 2027. And then for the short-lived climate forces methodology reports, it's a similar process, 4 lead author meetings. The selection of authors will happen in the second half of this year. And much like, it's a little bit less specific, the dates in these documents, but much like the City Special Report, the first meeting will happen in the first half of next year. And then ultimately the fourth lead author meeting at the beginning of 2027, and the adoption and acceptance will happen in the second half of 2027. So slightly, tiny bit longer or a little bit later than the special reports. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of things before I see Elena has her hand raised. I just wanted to emphasize, Elena, I think, said doing the job, or I don't know if it was you, but the word job, I just need to make it very, very clear that this is not a hired position. These are community contributions to the international community of research and policymaking. And again, like Giacomo said, it really does need your institutional support. So we wanted to make clear that this is a very strong commitment to make, and an extremely worthwhile commitment, not only for yourselves, but also for your institutes. And we sometimes struggle, you may encounter that your institute doesn't necessarily realize how important this role is. So I really recommend a dialogue if you're intending to nominate, and if you need support, for example, if you're based in Italy as Focal Point, I'm very happy to discuss this further with you if you feel there is a lack of awareness of what this process entails with your own institution. Let me just see if I had other points I wanted to come back to first. So I see there are questions in the chat, but first I come to Elena, who had raised her hand.
Yeah, sorry, I listening to what we all said, I think there's 2 other points perhaps worth making. The first one, I agree with you, Anna, when I said the job, I mean the actual job, not the hired job, is you have to produce work and whatever. So, but what is important there, I think there are 2 points that I think perhaps didn't transpire quite enough. I think number one, you're going to be required to learn new things and work in a multicultural environment, but you will have a tremendous asset, which is the TSU, the Technical Support Unit. So whatever you need to learn, you will have the possibility to learn. You don't need to, let's say, you need to have the expertise as you get in, but the process you will learn as you do it. And I think this is important, not to scare people away. The uncertainty language can be learned as you practice it, you know. So I think it's important to say that behind you will be people that will accompany you all, you know, every step of the way, and they're very, very supportive. This is they do a tremendous job, which I'm not sure gets recognized quite enough, but they really navigate you through the process. And the second one, I think, which is also important, is linked a little bit to what Anna said, which is coming out of this process, your standing as a scholar and your network as a scholar would be, I mean, short of being immense, is probably the good adjective for this, in the sense that you will have built professional connections, you will have, new people that you're working with, and also you will be asked to comment on the results, like particularly, for instance, I'm sure that Annalisa and Giacomo were the same, but you have sometimes people asking you to explain the report in Italian or the main results and whatever. So I think this is also something worth pointing out, because it's a really enriching professional experience. You can grow a lot by doing this. So thank you.
Thanks, Elena. And I want to pick up on a support word. Clearly, within the IPCC process, there is a lot of support that builds around the participants. It's a very nice, actually, environment to work in because the technical support units and the Bureau members and also the teamwork that happens amongst authors, I think it creates a very sort of supportive environment. But one aspect that I think we need to do more of, and hopefully those of you who will be selected as authors, but not only, those of you who are interested in motivating and contributing to these reports, I think we need mechanisms whereby the selected authors are really supported by their community. So in some respects, that's possible, for example, where you have organizations that coordinate communities like the World Climate Research Programme. There are mechanisms in place to provide community support. But for example, as a focal point in Italy, what we envisage doing with authors who are selected, also review editors, we will create a forum of bringing together those participating in different reports, so like a critical mass, an environment where we can work together to support you directly and across each other, but also we'll try and organize and stimulate a supportive mechanism from the Italian research community. So I saw there were a few comments. I do have some questions for our panelists, but first I wanted to get to the comments. So Majid is asking about participation as an early career scientist or junior researcher. And you already have many citations. I'm surprised 1,000, but maybe in your domain it works a little differently, but congratulations. So it's not only for senior researchers, but you do need to be confident in your domain, and you do, I think, need to have a very strong awareness of the breadth of the domain in which you work in, so that you can effectively contribute to what is, I suppose, quite a small team. So we will have author teams of between 15 is a kind of average number of people working on topics that have been identified in the scoped outline. So you can look for yourselves what that means. Essentially, you will be maybe one or maybe a couple of people from your background will be in that author team. You could be actually quite isolated in some respect in your expertise. So you need to be able to contribute and represent a broad knowledge base to a diverse set of experts. So maybe with seniority or with more experience, shall we say, coordinating work with colleagues in large research papers or projects or review activities that you've already been involved with. It's you don't need to be defined as senior researcher, but you need to have that experience, I suppose, in working in an international context. It really helps, but it's not to exclude people who are very, very motivated, because junior scientists will have new ideas, new methodologies, and much more motivation, perhaps, and time, perhaps, hopefully. So there's never, I mean, it's a difficult answer because early career scientists also maybe need to achieve certain things in their progression to progress as a senior scientist. So the timing, maybe our panelists can say something about this. I don't think there's a simple answer. The role of the focal point in the selection author, Albana has asked this question: is there a pre-selection? Can you help us in increasing the chances? So I can speak for ourselves as focal point for Italy. Our aim is to transmit to the IPCC Bureau effectively and efficiently what they are asking for from Italy. So you will see the expertise areas that have been identified in the scoped outlines. There are some technical instructions on how to complete your nomination, and we ensure that the appropriate and adequate nomination material is provided to Bureau members. So what our role is not to select. We don't select. That is undertaken by Bureau who have been elected by governments, and the formation of the Bureau is another discussion we can have to explain. But it's very important that Italy, the focal point, and I assume for other countries as well, are really trying to facilitate that interface with the IPCC. So bringing experts and practitioners, so we spend a lot of time advertising or communicating about what the calls are, explaining, here we are trying to explain, trying to make sure that we have very highly motivated applications coming in. So that you've considered carefully before applying your ability to contribute. So I hope that explains. Fernando is asking about nominations via Italy. If you are perhaps an Italian national, but based in a different country, the rule is that if you are based in a certain country, your focal point from that country will represent the expertise base in the IPCC. This is how Italy works. So we represent people coming from all over the world who work in Italy. So we have a very rich and international research community, and we promote that expertise base from Italy into the IPCC. So if you're an Italian based in the US, you would go through the US. If you encounter problems, for example, you're not able to be supported because a country is not following these kind of approaches, then, and if you have an Italian nationality, please get in contact with us. But regardless, I recommend to everybody, please try and contact your national focal point. And if you are unable to find their contact details, you can contact the IPCC Secretariat and they will support you there. As usual, Focal Point for Italy will help if possible. So if you're really in doubt, just email us. Anyway, we have 10 minutes left, but I was curious on a couple of things. One, maybe to pick up on this time commitment business, can you share a little bit more how you actually managed to fit this work into your usual daily duties in your jobs? Like what kind of, were you able to organize with your institute some kind of maybe reduction in responsibilities that permitted you to take this on? Do you have any advice on that respect that people could discuss with their institution? Just a first question. No one wants to answer. We can move on. A difficult question.
I can try. I can try to say something. And I think the answer to this depends a lot on the type of role you have. Like for me, for example, I'm a professor at an Italian university, and my university. But when I started this process, I wasn't yet in this position. Okay, I came to the university with the unpaid job of being an IPCC author, and they actually value that quite a bit. However, they are not, I mean, for our, the way we are set up, I didn't get any sort of discounting either in teaching or either in administrative other stuff or whatever. So basically that's an extra thing that you do. They support you, they make your time available, but you have some constraints. My luck, if I were to say, but I think it's everybody, we have a job that's relatively flexible enough that you have very few strong commitments, which is the classes or whatever. I guess you will need to discuss this on a personal basis. When I started when I was nominated, I was working at CMCC. So clearly CMCC values this very much and understands that this is part of your job. So I've lived on the two sides of the bank, on the two banks of the river. And so, yeah, but it's a very personal question and it depends very much on your institution. However, this is such an important role. So for instance, I don't know, in working group 3 last year, in the last cycle, there were 3 contributing authors from Italy, and that's it. So, I mean, this is such an important role that I fail to see how a public institution working in knowledge cannot appreciate that. But it may be the case. Let me leave it at that before I get myself in trouble.
Yeah, okay. I actually, sorry, I don't know who put up the hand first. Giacomo or Annalisa? Maybe just jump in if you were first.
Just to, yeah, thank you. Yes, just to add that it's depends a lot on what is the role that you have in your institution, how to balance the job. So when I accepted the role for the IPCC, I was quite flexible in the activities that I was doing. So I didn't have huge projects ongoing, etc. So it was doable thinking of managing the difference of timing. And it is also that the work that you do for the IPCC is demanding, but it has up and down. So there are periods where you are heavily involved, and then there are periods where you wait for something. So you wait for comments when there is the draft is submitted. So there are this up and down that helps you to then to balance the rest of your job. But it's for sure that your institute has to be aware that you're doing that and has to know that you will need to dedicate time to that. And it's also true that you will need to take time from other things that you do, because the day is 24 hours. So at some point you need to be very committed, and you need to know that there will be time taken out from your family, from your daily life for sure. But then the rewards can be enough to say, okay, I did good.
Yeah, and also for your academic record, I think authorship of a chapter is very, very high on the impact factor. So you might not be able to publish your own specific papers, your own research so much in that period, but you certainly will have a very, very important publication coming out. So Giacomo.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Anna just said. What I would say is don't take for granted that your hierarchy institution knows the relevance of this work. They may know, but depending on the context, maybe your boss is more focused on managerial task. So don't trust it. I mean, spend some time in making sure that your hierarchy, your institution appreciates the relevance of this work and the amount of work that requires from you, but also the benefit that the institution can receive, as also Elena said before, in terms of visibility. It is prestigious for an institution working on climate in general, on knowledge, scientific knowledge, to have an author or contributing author of the IPCC. So also spend some time making sure that there is a proper understanding of that.
Yeah, thank you very much for these reflections. I just want to see the questions very, very fast. Again, time is running out. Monica Salvia is asking about the contribution to the City Special Report with specific scientific publications. As I said, publishing is the number one way of contributing in a way. So what are the cutoff dates? You identify a key part of the process that I didn't identify in this presentation, and it is important. So literature needs to be published and reviewed and accepted in time for the completion of the report. So these dates are generally set by the technical support units with the Bureau members. And for the second order draft, it's in a good managerial approach to have a stable literature base being assessed. So tends to be around the time of the second order draft where we start limiting, shall we say, the novelty in the assessment process. We need to be able to consolidate and have limit the possibility of errors, things like that in the process. That's not to say that publications that are coming out, very, very important publications coming out very much towards the end before the approval and the distribution of the final government draft, that it could be decided to include a publication at a late stage. So one example of this happening was during the 1.5 special reports back in 2018, where it was a very novel research area actually that we were asked to assess. And so publications were coming late, and the Bureau and technical support units have put in place a sort of quality assurance mechanism beyond what we normally do. So we will come back with information on the cutoff dates as soon as these are available. It's a little bit preliminary, but you could consider that by the second order draft review, that's when papers should be out already in the literature and accepted. And then there's a comment from Elena. You're based in Denmark and you work for a private consultancy. So you're very welcome as a private consultant to apply as an author. I mentioned in another response that it's by no means only academically affiliated experts, not just from universities and things. So you're welcome to apply, but you would have to go through the Danish focal points. If you run into any challenges, just come back and contact us. But the Danish focal point is very active and I'm sure can answer your questions. Let's see. Chris is asking how to receive the recordings. Thank you for appreciating the meeting. We'll put this available on the Italy Focal Point website, and we'll distribute it on social media as soon as we can after the meeting, including some written responses to maybe the questions that we feel could be useful for a wider audience to see. So thank you. I think we basically don't have much time left, unless you want to. I just invite our guests, if you have any closing remarks, any last message you might want to say, any final motivation, but you're not obliged to.
No, I just want to say, if people are considering it, I think you should really do the consideration carefully, in that you will get a lot of rewards. It's going to be a lot of work, as I think we all said, Annalisa, Giacomo, and I. I hope people will not be excessively scared, okay, in a certain sense, because we do need people to volunteer. It's a tough job, it's an important job, but it's you become a representative of your discipline, of your area, of your country where you're based, if it's not your nationality. So it's extremely important that people put forward their applications. And having understood clearly, as we were trying to explain to you today, the commitments level and the size. So yeah, just go ahead and try if you have the standing or all the, if you check all the boxes, let me put it this way. So
yep. Very good advice, and I can just only iterate this to really that we're looking for very motivated, enthusiastic, and open-minded candidates to be put forward. We're very keen that Italy is represented strongly in the IPCC process in these reports, and also the following working group reports and methodology reports that will come out later. I want to highlight, maybe some people have asked me already this, how about being an author for more than one report, say cities, and then a working group report. I would try and caution against this because there are overlapping processes, so try and be selective. And please also nominate yourself if you know you can accept if you are selected. We can't really have doubtful processes, because I think we will see very, very high interest in participating. We saw for the scoping meetings, like many thousand people nominating themselves for these activities. And the Bureau takes around 3 months to do the selection. It's all this kind of balancing act of you take one element out and to rebalance this and putting together views from across the Bureau on how to construct best these author teams. It's a really, really difficult process. So we need to be sure that you will be committed as soon as you nominate. And we keep fingers crossed that you'll be selected. If you're not selected, please don't be disappointed, because there are other reports coming up and many ways in which you contribute. And if you have not participated in IPCC before, don't be discouraged. Please try, and again, you know, bit by bit, if you're that motivated, you will get involved for sure. So it's a very open and inclusive and I hope encouraging environment. It's just few places to be selected at the end of the day. So we have to be understanding of that as well. That's it. 1 minute late. I want to thank Annalisa, Elena, and Giacomo, and Agnese, who is in the background. She's helped us with the webinar. Thank you all for joining, and we'll make the recording available as soon as we can. It will be on the Italy Focal Point website, and I've been asked by Svetlana for the slides. We can make them available as well. And connect, if this was you found out about this webinar by chance, connect to our emailing list. Or encourage others, you know, share this communications mechanism, because we will continue to do activities and hopefully explain and provide information to raise awareness of the IPCC and basically how you can be involved. So thank you, and have a really nice day and a weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Anna.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.